Let's talk about this one. In the 19th century, the Queensland Times made public very private medical conditions, and we're going to share some of those more colourful medical complaints and the people with them. I hope nobody's still alive. How are you, Harold?
Fantastic, Danny. Look, it's important. Even if the people aren't alive, the families need to know, because it could be a genetic inheritance.
It could. Oh, okay, but we better make sure that we don't pick up a writ from this. You know?
No, well, dead people can't see, I guess, which is, I suppose, that's the basis of your program, isn't it,
It is, and tell us all about it. There's a lot of people outside now. People start to accumulate at the front and the main street here, causing the police will turn up soon because they're blocking the road.
They all want to hear about this history of health in Ipswich and what Queensland Times reported, because back then there was no chance that your health records would ever be kept secret. Forget about hiding your vaccination certificate and stuff these days. Back then, it was in the paper.
Is that right, eh?
Yeah, now at the Ipswich Hospital, there were the usual broken bones and gunshot wounds. And in 1876, there was only one person reported with gonorrhea, which would have meant a lot of finger pointing later on when an outbreak occurred, right? but then there were
I'm just checking now.
Okay, but also you want to check for things like they had back then was paralysis of the bladder. And a really big problem was constipation and dysentery. Now, cases were individually reported, like poor Miriam Avis, who was aged 56 when she was admitted to the Ipswich Hospital in 1890. Miriam had chronic dysentery and died 8 days later. And thirdly, there were many others like her.
That's sad.
Now, the Crib and Foot store in Ipswich began advertising medicines and miracle cures. And the advertisements often included testimonials from people who explained their condition in detail. Now, in 1899, there was an American called Jake Grisham. Now, he was a veteran of the Confederate Army and had suffered chronic diarrhea for 35 years.
Oh, he mustn't have put on any weight.
Well, it started at the end of the American Civil War when the Union Army came to town, and it hadn't stopped since.
On his headstone, it says, "Do you mind if I borrow your toilet?"
Well, it was a similar thing in 1905 with Fred Gillit. He was from Walgan, New South Wales, and his story, and could have something similar on his headstone, that was well advertised. He shared his personal story of suffering chronic constipation for many years, most of his life. Fred was unusual, though, because he at least had the good sense to change his name for the advertisement and enjoy some sort of anonymity. And he died 12 years later with his bowels actually in good shape. Now, in 1909, there was George Watson in Brisbane. He actually had to withdraw from the Windsor Town Council elections, probably because of ill health. George later revealed that for 10 years he'd been suffering from the effects of bleeding and protruding piles. That means that the cursed piles had actually decided a council election.
Ouch.
But a year earlier, in 1908, Ipswich boasted a unique father-son combination that suffered from dyspepsia. Now, I'll tell you the names in a moment. Just for those that don't know, you do though, but dyspepsia is indigestion, reflux, recurring pain in the upper abdomen. But the father-son's names there was William Towerton Sr., who was a bootmaker on Thorn Street, and his son William Jr., who lived on Warwick Road. Both the Towertons suffered from severe bilious attacks and couldn't keep anything down. Whenever they ate, they would have violent fits of vomiting, and the straining and retching over many years, understandably, became very distressing for both of them.
Oh, really?
But their medical complaints probably shouldn't have come as a surprise, Danny, because years earlier, William Towerton Sr. was taken to court for not following a public health order.
Back then.
That's right. And back then, the family was living in Union Street at the time, and William Jr. was just 5 years old. The Towerton's home was inspected by the Ipswich Nuisance Inspector, which was an official title, and it was you'd have him knocking on your door all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. But in this case, he determined that the Towerton's privy out the back was in an extremely foul state. In fact, it was so disgusting that it was deemed a public health risk to the whole of the town and was condemned. The family was served a notice to remove it, but they refused, and so the Towertons were taken to court. But in any case, William Towden Sr. must have cleaned up his life, Danny, because when he died in 1925, he was a respected member of the Ipswich Salvation Army. Oh. So, Danny, next time you and Damien complain about your various aches and pains, just remember the Ipswich people of the recent past who had to put up with things a lot worse. Things like paralysis, the bladder, and the protruding piles, and Towden's toilet.
I knew a bloke played for Queensland as a good mate of mine, Gene Protruding Piles. Oh, Gene Miles. That's right. Anyhow, mate, where do you get this stuff? It's public, wasn't it? Well, you know, radio used to have the funeral notices all the time. Like, you know, let's drag everybody down in their emotions, and let's talk about poor old Danny Hoyland's passed away from protruding piles. You know, it's very... Anyhow, look, your stuff, we do get reaction. Your stuff's very interesting. If you're going to jump ship, can you just let us know? We'll slip you another 10. How do we...
10 what?
10... Mate, can you tell us...
That's what I thought.
How can we get on, find out about this and read it again?
Yeah, look, it'll be uploaded first thing in the morning on historyouthere.com.
Historyouthere.com. And look, we need people to get on board about the ark, and I need them to sit at the table or go to the nearest field and pump their arms like their wings and yell out, ark, 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 because we've got a good prize. We don't know what it is, but we'll find one for them, okay?